Okay, so we're going to discuss three things that are relevant to the analytical paragraph structure. The first thing we're going to talk about is what I call braces. And braces, you can understand them simply as portions of a topic sentence that refer back to the thesis, or more specifically, they use language from the thesis or very similar language from the thesis. All right. The other thing we're going to talk about is discussing evidence, and the third and last thing is visual language. And we'll go through all of those things 1 through 3. All right. So we need something to talk about. So we're not talking about these three concepts in abstraction. And so we're going to use a snippet of John Smith's essay. You can see here that we have an essay called Why We Should Have a Universal Healthcare System by John Smith. And at the end of the paragraph here, we see that John Smith ends his paragraph on his thesis. He writes, therefore, the United States should design and implement universal healthcare because the number of uninsured is growing and those who are insured are burdened by the ever-increasing costs of premiums. Now you can see here that we kind of have a three-part thesis. We have a claim, the United States should design and implement universal health care, and then we have two reasons. Number one, because the number of uninsured is growing, and number two, those who are insured are burdened by the ever-increasing costs of premiums. Now in this discussion, we're only going to make it through the second paragraph of John's essay, so we're just going to focus on that first reason there, which is the number of uninsured is growing. All right? Now, any research essay, any argumentative essay, as you know, needs evidence. So if John's thesis is that, or part of his thesis is that we should have universal health care because the number of uninsured is growing, he needs evidence for that, for that assertion, right? We need evidence that the number of uninsured is growing. He just can't say it's growing, he needs proof. So as I dig around in John's research journal here, I find a graph that he has included. Now, John's not here with me at the moment while I'm doing this little lecture, so I can't ask him what he meant by this graph, or I can't ask him why he included this graph in his essay, but clearly, or in his journal rather, wants to include it in his essay, but clearly this graph is important to him. I do see a couple things here. I see that in 2007, the uninsured rate was at 7.2%. These numbers might be a little small for you to read, that's why I'm reading them to you. And in 2009, the uninsurance rate in Minnesota was 9.0%. Now, when I look at those really quickly off the top of my head, that seems like a small increase to me. It's less than 2 percentage points. And I wonder, is that a big trend in the rate of uninsured in Minnesota? What should I understand from those numbers? So I'm not quite sure if this is evidence or if this is effective evidence. I'm not quite sure how to talk about it yet, right? But I do notice that John has left some notes in his research journal. Let's take a look at those notes. Okay, so we see a few things here. What do we see? We see one note he has here that the population in 2009, presumably of Minnesota, was 5,262,824. Interesting, because the population wasn't information that was included on that graph. I think John must have visited the Census Bureau or something. We can also see that the population in 2007 was 5,191,267,000. All right, what does this other note here say? Let's see, it says that 7.2% of 5,191,267 is approximately 374,000 people. So I guess what we can tell from that, because John has done this math, is that in 2007, 7.2% of the population was uninsured, which was 374,000 people. I hope his math is good. I'm going to assume his math is good. All right. There's another note here. It says that 9.0% of 5,262,824 is approximately 473,000 people. And that looks like that is the number of uninsured, the 9.0%, the number of uninsured in 2009. And so it looks like here when we look at this graph of paper here, that John has done some basic arithmetic. He has subtracted the number of uninsured in 2009 from the number of uninsured in 2007 and come up with 99,000 people. And that number seems significant to me. That is nearly 100,000 uninsured people over the course of 2 years, from 2007 to 2009. So at first we thought, 2% doesn't seem that bad. But when you look at what those actual numbers are in terms of real people, it seems quite a big deal. And in fact, to put this in perspective, I know that 100,000 people is nearly the population of Duluth or Bloomington or Rochester. So let's imagine any one of those cities with an entire population uninsured. And that's tremendous, right? That's a lot of uninsured people. Okay, so notice what we've done here is we've gone from having a basic graph that might serve as evidence to doing a little investigation, to scrutinizing the graph, doing a little math. So we've looked at the evidence and we figured out how, in fact, it is evidence for our thesis. And that first part of our thesis was, if you remember, that the number of uninsured is growing. And certainly this number we have in front of us in blue indicates that, over the course of 2 years, the number of uninsured is growing.